the Super Tuesday hasn't really changed that much because it has essentially confirmed our expectations and it has been pretty much in line with what the polling data suggested. So we see now that Trump is prevailing and we see that Joe Biden does have to tackle disaffected voters who have been disappointed with his record so far, but who will probably not side with Trump afterwards. So Super Tuesday offers both parties the chance to take stock and to consider what voters they now need to really address more aggressively, more persuasively. So for Joe Biden, the incumbent, it's very important that he addresses the so-called disaffected Democrats. So he is struggling with the fact that a lot of people who voted for him in 2020 are not sure whether they'll do so again on November 5th. And he has to prove to them that his record really met the expectations and promises that he made in 2020. So that is one group he has to address. Among these disaffected Democrats, he particularly has to address minority voters, people who are of color, Muslim Americans who are disappointed by his policy vis-a-vis Israel and others. And then the other group that both candidates will try to capture are the so-called persuadables. These are voters who are undecided whether they should side with Trump or with Biden. And among them, there are also the so-called double haters who dislike both candidates. And one candidate has to at least persuade them to dislike him a little less and hopefully get mobilized for the November 5th election. And for Biden, the particular challenge is also among the persuadables to get the attention of those Republican voters who said that they would never vote for Trump. And although that's only a fifth of Republican voters, a fifth can make a big difference in so-called swing states. Balancing the needs, the ideas, the preferences of these groups will be a hard task for both Biden and Donald Trump. For Donald Trump, probably even more so because he's the more polarizing figure. And voters will be reminded of his track record both as president and as person in the coming weeks and months. That the Democratic camp will make sure of. We'll see a lot of attack advertisements against Donald Trump, and we will see him in court when the Stormy Daniels case is coming to the bench in New York. And for Biden, the problem is that he, as the incumbent, has so far failed to tell a persuasive story of his legacy. So he has actually had a very ambitious legislative record that he pushed through with the Inflation Reduction Act, Bidenomics as it is called nowadays. And he hasn't really been able to sell the accomplishments of his administration. It's very much like a book titled Why Conservatives Tell Stories and Liberals Don't by David Ritchie, a very renowned political scientist, who argued that Democrats are very bad at telling persuasive stories, whereas Republicans have always used big stories about America to sell themselves to voters. And it's now up to Biden to find that persuasive story. And maybe tomorrow, when we're watching the State of the Union address, he will make an attempt to really weave a more persuasive narrative and really sell his economic record to voters. Elections are very exciting times for political junkies and people who like to think in different scenarios. And one scenario that a lot of people are thinking about is, A, what if Trump gets locked up before November 5th? And the other is, what if the Democrats at the National Convention in the summer bring another candidate? Might that change everything? So regarding scenario A, seeing Donald Trump behind bars, That's very unlikely to happen. Very unlikely, actually, because simply the court dates do not align with the possibility of seeing him behind bars in winter. So that is a scenario we don't really have to think about. And then the question whether the Democrats might replace Joe Biden, that would be a very, very, very dangerous bet to make. Even though there are very good potential candidates who would have the makings of a national candidate for the presidency, these people are yet not on the same level of prominence as the incumbent is, of course. So to place someone like Gretchen Whitmer on the national stage without the benefit of the primary season to get her feet wet, to make mistakes, but not with all the lights on her, that would be a very risky endeavor. And so unless something major happens, we are bound to see a rematch in November between Biden and Trump.